Hey everyone, the next edition of Kernel of Truth, here we are. No hat this time. I pulled off my own quarantine haircut. Only got kind of close there. So, I mean, other than that, we're kosher. And I wanted to pick up right where we left off. You know, the last time we covered the basics of a grain price, futures, basis, and cash. And, you know, at the end there, I kind of went down the wormhole on hedging and risk, and I just get too worked up because I'm a risk nerd. You know, I can only kind of equate it to Quint from Jaws when he starts talking about sharks and, you know, the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. And that's kind of how I am on risk. So with these two, futures and basis price, you know, I hinted on it last time, but they both have risk associated with them. And in that risk, these two prices are not, they don't move together. They're not correlated, and if anything, they're negatively correlated in that if futures price goes up and the cash price rises and I get an influx of grain, I have to shut those floodgates down and actually lower that basis. So, you know, in a way they're kind of negatively correlated, but again, that kind of depends on local supply and demand. So when we start talking about risk, we start talking about hedging, and hedging is no more than protecting yourself against adverse price movements. So, i.e., protecting against the price going down. And we can do that in the futures, and that's why the futures market was designed, was as a risk management tool for producers, end users, and you know, your processors. So we can use the futures market to hedge that risk on the futures price. Basis risk is another story. Basis risk cannot be hedged. The only thing that can be done with basis risk is it's merely transferred within the market. So you hear guys talking about buying and selling basis. All they're doing is transferring or buying or selling basis risk. So if a producer thinks the basis is going to go down, he will sell that basis risk to the end user, to the grain elevator, and merely put that risk on them. So he's transferred it out of his hand, and the elevators and end users will do the same. But what we're going to focus on is using hedging to basically take out this futures price risk. And somehow or another, I've ended up locked in on this Hershey's example. I got a lot of comments on it last time, and it's, you know, as good as anything to try and illustrate this. So here you are with your Hershey's bar, and you know, you're in the marketplace, and you know that you're going to have it now, and you want to sell it later. And, you know, I was thinking about risk this week, you know, and I'm working on something else, and I had an epiphany on, you know, what does all risk have in common? And the common factor of any of this risk is all risk has time in common, because a price needs time to move. You know, the price right now is the price right now. The price tomorrow is going to be different because you've given it time to move. So, you know, in this example, we'll just call this now and later. And here you are right now. So you're gonna go out and you're gonna get this Hershey's bar. And say you buy this Hershey's bar for $3 cash. You bought that for $3 cash. And in this example, we'll just say that basis is equal to 0, so your option to board, cash and futures are equal. So how I explain hedging is I in my head, I always think of Newton's third law of motion, that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And this is my poor example of Newton's cradle, you know, the balls that hit each other. And that's how I think of futures and cash. So everything that you do in cash, do the opposite in futures. So I went out here and I bought this for $3. Right now, I'm going to sell the opposing futures at $3. And here you've essentially started your hedge. So you are long, or you bought cash and you sold the futures, so you're short futures. And when you say you bought this cash, you know, this is the same thing as producing. So if you're growing grain, if you're making fuel, if you're, you know, any of that stuff, if you're going to have this, if you're long that in the cash market, then you're going to want to sell those futures as the hedge. So you've basically created this position here to hedge or protect yourself against this price decreasing, because you want to sell it for more than $3 later. So you come over here and that price did drop. You know, that price, the cash price that you're going to sell that in, is now $2. So you lost in the cash market. You're like, oh man, what the heck? But when you sell that in the cash market, you're going to go in there and you're going to buy those futures back. And those futures are now at $2 because we're still option. So in cash, we lost $1. But in futures, where we sold at 3 and re-owned it at 2, we gained $1. And that is basically how it works. That whatever I'm going to lose here, I'll gain here. And it could be just the opposite. Whatever. So say this went to 5, and I gained 2 in the cash, I lost it in the futures. So you're eliminating the potential for price gain, but you're also eliminating that downside. Me personally, I'm pretty risk adverse. So I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to any kind of price stuff. So I always like the idea of hedging price. So there you have it. Basically, it's just using futures to hedge the cash risk by having opposing transactions. And it's definitely a daunting task. You know, guys ask me all the time, say I want to even do this, you know, where do you start? And there's a lot of different platforms. I know guys that use, you know, TD Ameritrade, Thinkorswim platform. I think some guys do Wells Fargo. But there's also different companies out there that help out with that kind of thing. Daniel's Trading. I follow some of their stuff, and they put out great producer stuff as far as market information. They're very helpful. Can't say enough. I listen to Craig Turner quite a bit, and he puts out a great podcast and always has good stuff to say. But that's it. That's hedging in a nutshell. And then you from here you basically plug basis back in, and basis is where you can gain or lose in a market. From an elevator standpoint, you're always kind of hoping for that basis appreciation, because that's hopefully where you do make some money, or if there's carry in these markets. But long story short, that's hedging. You're basically protecting against downside risk through the use of the futures market. And tune in the next time, and we'll be on to the next thing. But thanks for joining.